Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, today we're going to cover a really tragic story happening out of Washington, D.C. And this occurred Wednesday evening at about 9 p.m., where two Israeli embassy staff were shot and killed in Washington, D.C. Senseless killing. The perpetrator has been caught. There's a picture of him right up on the screen. His name is Elias Rodriquez. We'll get into more about him and what he's being charged with. But the senselessness of these murders, and of course it has to do with Israel and Palestine and the protests in our country, in the United States, between Israel and Palestine. And violence is never, ever, ever the answer. And one of my big problems with this is that I believe that these protests on college campuses have been allowed to go too far. And what do I mean? That we're a country that allows freedom of speech, and we pride ourselves on allowing people to have political dissent and to protest. But once they start showing hatred toward one group, and the anti-Semitism at some of these Ivy League campuses is off the charts. We've seen it, it's off the charts, and nothing's being done about it. So what does it have to do with this shooting in D.C.? Well, this climate of hatred has been allowed to spread throughout the United States, and it has to stop. No group should ever be targeted because of their race, color, creed, religion. And when it does, it is a violation of not just that person and group's civil rights, but it's a hate crime. And we have to look into these things, and we have to stop them, because the climate of hatred is permeating, especially anti-Semitism, and it has to stop. So folks, hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs. And BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds and everything from Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. So this shooting on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Resulted in the deaths of these two embassy employees, Yuron Lashinsky and Sarah Migram, who just incidentally were going to get engaged to be married. Such a tragic story. And this man here, Elias Rodriquez, shot and killed them while shouting, "Free, free, free Palestine." And the investigation, of course, is still very early. But what we know is that this shooting, this killing, was and is based on hatred. Federal prosecutors are investigating the fatal shooting of a couple leaving a reception for young diplomats at a Jewish museum in Washington as a hate crime and an act of terrorism. The suspect told police officers, "I did it for Gaza." This is according to the FBI. The suspect in the shooting deaths of two Israeli embassy employees in Washington was charged with first-degree murder and other crimes on Thursday, according to an FBI affidavit filed in federal court in the Capitol. The suspect Elias Rodriquez, 31 years old, told police officers, "I did it for Palestine, I did it for Gaza," according to the affidavit. Jeanine Pirro, the interim U.S. attorney in Washington, said her office was investigating the shooting as a hate crime and as terrorism. Agents in tactical gear descended on Mr. Rodriguez's Chicago home on Thursday morning. Investigators are still trying to learn what might have led the suspect, a longtime activist with a college education and a job at a medical association, to turn violent during a business trip to the capital city. Officials said Rodriguez had legally checked a gun with his baggage when he flew from Chicago to the Washington area on Tuesday for a work conference. The following night, federal agents said he has been seen pacing outside the Capitol Jewish Museum while a gathering of young diplomats went inside. When he encountered Yuron Lashinsky and Sarah Migram as they left the museum, Mr. Rodriguez shot the couple, continuing to fire even as Mr. Lashinsky lay fallen and Miss Migram tried to crawl away, according to federal officials. At his initial appearance in federal court in Washington on Thursday afternoon, Mr. Rodriguez entered no plea. The victims are Mr. Lashinsky's 30. He grew up in Israel and Germany, was a research assistant in the political department at the embassy. Miss Migram, 26, an American from Prairie Village, Kansas, organized trips to Israel, according to the ministry. The two were dating, and Mr. Lashinsky had planned to propose marriage next week on a trip to Israel. The suspect, Mr. Rodriguez, approached four people who were leaving the event, shot the two victims, and then entered the museum where he was detained by security officers. His online profiles indicated that he was raised in Chicago, graduated from a university in the city, and worked at a healthcare nonprofit. Just absolutely horrific, you know. And as I said, that report there was from the New York Times. As I said earlier, the hatred that has been allowed to spread, especially the anti-Semitism on college campuses, is beyond the pale. And why these college campuses have allowed it to go this far is beyond me. To the point where I believe Harvard's and Columbia University's presidents were fired. So I don't know which president they're on right now, but something has to be done. And you may ask, well, what does anti-Semitism on the campuses of Columbia and Harvard have to do with this act of hatred, terrorism, and horrific murder of two shining stars, really, in the community? Well, if you allow this type of hatred to permeate, it almost gives license to other crazies with a gun to kill people because of religion or ethnicity or anything that a crazy will be allowed to do when there's no penalty or there's no pushback from the government. Here's a report on the shooting.
Folded around 9 last night.
Response 1, active shooter 30, Africa Foxtrot Street Northwest.
A group of people leaving a young diplomat's reception at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington when a gunman opened fire. 26-year-old Sarah Migram and her partner, 30-year-old Yuron Lashinsky, both diplomatic staff at the Israeli embassy, were killed. Tonight, it's being investigated as a targeted terror attack.
The tragic murder of these two Israeli embassy employees outside of the Capitol Jewish Museum last night was both an act of terror and directed violence against the Jewish community. And it has the full and unwavering attention of the FBI.
The alleged gunman, 30-year-old Elias Rodriquez, shouted, "Free Palestine," as he was taken into police custody.
Free Palestine!
He's now facing multiple charges, including first-degree murder and murder of foreign officials. Today, the FBI is searching his Chicago apartment.
Violence against anyone based on their religion is an act of cowardice.
President Trump posting, "Hatred and radicalism have no place in the USA." Witnesses say it was a rainy night, and after firing the shots, the alleged gunman rushed into the museum.
All of a sudden, we start hearing what sounds like gunshots.
The people inside had no idea what he had allegedly done and offered him a glass of water.
We're just thinking he's a witness, frazzled, and trying to comfort him.
When did you realize that he wasn't just a witness, that he was involved?
I would say it was about 10 minutes later when he started yelling to the entire museum, "I did it. Free Palestine, I did it for Gaza."
Tonight, Israel's prime minister speaking out.
The terrorists who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th.
The attack comes amid an alarming rise in anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S., soaring nearly 900% in the last decade. Meanwhile, we're learning more about the two victims.
They had perfect children. No problems. Not between parents. Can say that.
In 2017, Sarah Migram spoke to our station in Kansas City when her high school was vandalized with anti-Semitic graffiti.
I worry about going to my synagogue, and I have to worry about safety at school, and that shouldn't be a thing.
Sarah's dad telling us he only found out last night that Yuron was going to propose.
Yuron had bought an engagement ring for Sarah and planned on giving it to her when they were in Jerusalem, about a week or two from now, which we did not know. So it was the best of times and the worst of times.
Aaron joining us now. Aaron, police were out there at the site of the shooting most of the day.
Mostly for security, Lester, as the investigation continues. We know they recovered a handgun and 21 spent shell casings here on the ground outside the museum. Meanwhile, there is a vigil tonight to remember the two victims. Lester?
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Let's bring in Tom Winter now in the investigation into the suspect. Tom, what have you learned?
Well, Lester, we have new details on the weapon tonight. Court documents allege Rodriguez bought the gun in Illinois in 2020 and brought it to D.C. in his checked luggage. On Tuesday, the FBI is also investigating online writings, possibly from Rodriguez, saying he carried out this attack because of his views on the Israel-Hamas war. They're now combing through his phone and reaching out to his family. Meanwhile, officials in Washington say they're ramping up their police presence at public gatherings citywide. Here in New York, highly trained teams of heavily armored police are now deployed to many Jewish institutions. Lester?
So just, outrageous. Whenever something like this happens, the terrorism, the two wonderful young people murdered that were in the prime of their life, about to start a life together, and this person takes it upon himself because of ideology to take their lives, to shoot them in cold blood because of ideology. And as I said before, and I'll repeat later, is that I think when you allow this type of hatred to permeate on college campuses, and that there's no retribution for this type of stuff, it's going to spread and it's going to get worse. And here we have this individual, and the investigation is early, right? He came from Chicago. He must have had a gun permit because he was allowed to pack his gun in his luggage legally. He legally transported his gun on the plane from Illinois to Washington, D.C. So he must have had a carry permit, or a permit that allowed him to carry in numerous states, because he was allowed to bring his gun to D.C. And then he used that gun to kill two young people, two young, beautiful people, Yuron Lashinsky and Sarah Migram. And these are things. Now, how about the investigation? Well, they're going to be looking into his background. Did he act alone? What was his online presence, his Facebook, his Instagram, Twitter, all of those things they'll be checking out. And of course, they'll get a search warrant for his cell phone. I believe they've already searched his apartment in Illinois. There's no logical reason, but the FBI will be looking perhaps to see if he had any accomplices. Did he act alone? And how did he reach this radical ideological bent that allowed him to act upon his terroristic ideals and kill these two wonderful embassy workers? I mean, it's a different thing to be a protester, peaceful protester, because that's what we allow in this country. We allow peaceful protesting. We don't allow violent protesting, although sometimes peaceful protests and violent protests get mixed up. And because of politics, some people call them the same thing, Largely peaceful protests, where they hated Jews and they screamed hatred against Jews on college campuses that are paid for with public funds, with taxpayer money. I think we can do better. I think the presidents of these colleges can do much better. I think the federal government can do much better. The state government can do much better to put pressure on these college campuses to stop the hatred against any one group. And it happens to be anti-Semitism, which is running rampant at this point. And did anti-Semitism claim the life of these two young embassy workers, Yuron Lashinsky and Sarah Migram? Was that what caused them to lose their lives? Of course, it's hatred. It's absolutely hatred. Oh, he's shouting out, free, free Palestine, and he did this for Gaza? How did this help Gaza? It helped nothing. It helped nothing. And now you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life or possibly get the death penalty, Elias Rodriquez. Who did it help? And two young people at the beginning, starting out their lives together, now lost their lives. Does that make any sense? Hatred wins, but hatred doesn't win. Hatred doesn't win, and we have to spread the word that it will never win. Hatred and terrorism doesn't solve anything. The new prosecutor, the new Attorney General, Jeanine Pirro, spoke yesterday. She appeared to be extremely angry. I will play her an excerpt from her.
United States Attorney, welcome. Our community today is reeling as a result of one person's actions. Two families now are left to grieve for dreams that will never be realized. And as I speak right now, there is an individual who is being presented in court and charged with various crimes. 31-year-old Elias Rodriquez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh with the following: murder in the first degree for the murder of 30-year-old Yuron Lashinsky, a foreign official and official guest of the United States. Mr. Lashinsky was here on official business for the State of Israel. The defendant Rodriguez is also charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree for both Yuron Lashinsky along with 26-year-old Sarah Lynn Migram of Kansas. In addition, there are several felony firearms charges for discharging a firearm in the middle of a violent crime and for causing the death of an individual through the use of that firearm. Now, this investigation is continuing, and as you can see, we have most of the stakeholders here today who will be given an opportunity to speak with you. But what I want to be clear about today, since this is the first time you're hearing from me, is that this is a horrific crime, and these crimes are not going to be tolerated by me and by this office. A young couple at the beginning of their life's journey, about to be engaged in another country, had their bodies removed in the cold of the night in a foreign city in a body bag. We are not going to tolerate that anymore. And I am not unaware, based upon my own background, of the repercussions of this kind of case. This is the kind of case that picks at old sores and old scars, because these kinds of cases remind us of what has happened in the past that we can never and must never forget. I want to mention one thing. The Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., where this young couple had been at an event, was built around a brick building. That brick building was previously a synagogue called Adas Israel. It was one of Washington's first synagogues, a congregation that was created in 1869. And Ulysses S. Grant, our president, actually attended the dedication of that synagogue. And so to this day, that synagogue and that area remains a cornerstone of the Jewish community in D.C. Let me also say that violence against anyone based on their religion is an act of cowardice. It is not an act of a hero. It is the kind of case that we will vigorously pursue. Anti-Semitism will not be tolerated, especially in the nation's capital. Now, we're going to continue to investigate this as a hate crime and a crime of terrorism, and we will add additional charges as the evidence warrants. So this charging today is the initial charge. Remember, we're less than 24 hours from the crime itself. And we are working furiously and diligently with our partners behind me. We've got massive amounts of evidence that we are vetting, we are verifying, and we are reviewing. This is the start and not the beginning. And finally, let me say this. President Donald Trump appointed me to this position. This is the nation's capital. We should all be proud of this capital. And the president wants D.C. safe. And I and the partners behind me are going to do everything we can to make people proud of this city, whether they're from this city, from the country, or from other parts of the world. Thank you.
So that was Jeanine Pirro, and you can hear in her voice how mad she is, you know. And she's a U.S. attorney now. I incorrectly said Attorney General. She's a U.S. attorney, and she's going to prosecute this, and she's going to investigate this. For those that don't know her career, she was the former Westchester County District Attorney for many, many years, and then of course she became sort of famous as a broadcaster on Fox News, and she's known all over the world for that. But she enumerated how they will not tolerate crimes against people because of their religion. You know, it's a hate crime. It's terroristic, and it's clear that she was put in the D.C. area to make a difference, to make a change. You know, and this individual here, we see Elias Rodriquez, who's going to be charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree for shooting and killing these 2 innocent people, Yuron Lashinsky and Sarah Migram, who were just about ready to get engaged to be married. Murder in the first degree. 2 people lost their lives. 2 shining stars, I might add. And then this guy, his life is over, you know. And I know I'm not feeling any sympathy towards him whatsoever. But what would motivate someone, the ideology that strongly, that they would just shoot and kill 2 symbols, I guess, of Israel? Is that what it was? These 2 Israeli embassy staff, they're symbols of Israel. And the hatred, the anti-Semitism, the hatred of Jews permeating in this shooting, in this despicable act of cowardice, really, of cowardice. You know, Israel officials described the shooting as a product of anti-Semitism that has surged since the Israeli military went to war against Hamas in Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel spoke with President Trump and thanked the president for his administration's efforts to combat anti-Semitism. There's a climate of protest, a wave of pro-Palestinian protests, most of them nonviolent, has erupted across the United States during the conflict in Gaza. Some critics, including the Trump administration and Israel, have accused protesters of promoting anti-Semitism and inciting violence against Jews. Many demonstrators and their supporters have said that such accusations are intended to suppress political speech and their support for the Palestinian cause. So, whatever the cause, 2 people have lost their lives. 2, as I said, shining stars. Yuron Lashinsky and Sarah Migram have lost their lives. And this case is very early in the investigation. We will find out if this individual, Elias Rodriquez, acted alone. Did he have help? Did someone point him to this location? Or was he doing his own research? And the FBI and the law enforcement agencies that are on this case will investigate this case to the fullest and bring a positive result to the prosecution of Elias Rodriquez, who took the lives of these two, Yuron Lashinsky and Sarah Migram, for no apparent reason except hatred because they were Jews, something that cannot be tolerated. Anti-Semitism of any form cannot be tolerated in this country. Anyone for their religious beliefs should not be tolerated, or for that matter, for someone's race, ethnicity, or national origin. Those are all things that make these types of crimes a hate crime. Besides 2 counts of murder in the first degree, this is undoubtedly a hate crime. And we're seeing too much of this in this country, and it really, really, really needs to stop. So, folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit that like button, share us with your friends and your family. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.